Well, good afternoon, and my first question is, how are you enjoying drinking from a fire hose? Because does it not feel like we have had so much good information, and it's hard to take it all in? But I'm going to keep this intro very short because I really want to give the panelists an opportunity to share. My name is Carrie Kurtz. I am the co-chair of PARC's Housing Subcommittee, along with Rouze Duncan. And I just want to introduce, this is Danysh with Tomorrow's Neighbors, sorry. Larry Snyder with the DOC Home Plan, Julian Rubio with DOC Reentry, and Lauren, Alicia, and Amy that will be talking about PATH and Hope Homes as well as SOAR. Oh, just a few little things too. We will have at the end, hopefully we'll have an opportunity for question and answers. So.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Larry Snyder. Was amazing this morning whenever he mentioned Highland Gardens, and I'm like, that's where I did my very first home plan, nearly 2 decades ago. So I was like, listen to this whole thing without actually having everybody's feedback on it before. I was like, a lot of what we do with our home plans is to involve collaboration with where they're going to, and to provide them the foundation for success. So what I would like to let everyone know about is my slides are going to involve a lot of what I'm actually going to talk on, because I know that some individuals, a little bit better if they read it than if they hear it. So I'm just going to give you that fair warning that it may seem like a lot of reruns up there. All right, so what we're talking about with home plans is they're done to ensure the public safety and to provide a foundation for success. We've already heard, and we already know, that if somebody's going back home to where they have family, friends, individuals that can support them, support within the community, they're going to have a greater chance of success, and that's what we want to shoot for every time we're doing a home plan. We do it to ensure that they can safely return to the community, that they are not put in any kind of danger. And we developed that home plan to provide a supportive relationship with that reentrant for their success. I can tell you right now, one of my very first times that I was ever involved in something, I rolled up to a guy's house, he took off running, and I said, oh. And I thought, maybe I got to go running after him. And all of a sudden my brain went, wait, let's just go in and talk to his mama. Right? I walked in and talked to his mom, and she goes, hold on, calls him up on the cell phone and says, get back here. We wouldn't have had that success if I didn't have a relationship with her first, which is why we start off talking to them before they get released or before they move in. And our goal is to minimize reestablishing conditions that can lead to reoffending. And we're considered these on a case-by-case basis. And what that means is there's no pre-approved home plans. Every person coming out to return to society is an individual, and so we will investigate each home plan individually. That way we can tailor to that specific individual's needs and to ensure that we're maximizing their success. So there's a submission process and timelines. The reentrant is responsible for developing an approvable home plan. Those resources are available in every SEI if assistance is needed in developing that home plan. They submit the home plan through the use of a home plan form. That is located in the parole handbook, all right, and it's also located within the parole offices within the SCIs. And out on the table outside, we've got a copy of that handbook if anybody would like to look over it. If they're already out on the street, they're in a center, they submit that information directly to their agent of record. One of the questions we often get is there a cost with home plans? Well, the answer is no if it's in-state. If it's an in-state home plan, there's no cost. If it's an interstate plan, there is a cost at this time. Interstate Compact says it is $125. And that is because it involves another state, and we are bound by that interstate compact. And time frames. In-state home plans expected to take 30 to 45 days from I've submitted it till I get my results back. Interstate cases take longer because it involves other states. we have no control over how long those other states are. But we've got the process down to where it takes between 30 and 45 days from whenever it's submitted. Everybody has roles within it. I'm just going to briefly go over the roles of the parole staff. In the institution, they will conduct vetting of the home provider and the address. They're going to contact that home provider. They're going to ensure that we've got good contact information so that whenever it goes out to the field, it doesn't get rejected because we couldn't get a hold of someone. We also look at, we're going to go over the financial information, employment, and available resources to support that reentrant. Then that agent's going to submit the plan for investigation and they monitor the results. Once they get the results back, they relay it to the reentrant. For what most people are concerned about, though, is what happens out in the field. What happens to those agents that are out in the district offices? They're going to conduct a thorough review of the reentrant's history, identify any concerns for success. They're going to review available information about the home provider. We're going to review the status of the property itself and identify any issues. We're going to be contacting the office of the victim advocate in case there's any conflicts. And we're going to contact that home provider, the landlord if applicable. We're going to find out if there's any listed employers to see if there's anything we can do with them. When possible, we're going to schedule a meeting time with the home provider as a courtesy and so that we're not wasting people's time. So that we are out there saying, when are you available? And then we tailor to meet that need. We have had times whenever we've had people submit it and they go, oh, I'm on vacation for the next week. Can we meet afterwards? Oh, absolutely. Because we're not going to want you to have to wait on us. The second thing that we do whenever we schedule that is we let them know that we're going to be coming to the home and we're going to give them a little bit of an insight as to what we're going to do while we're there. And once we're done with the entire process, we submit the results back to the institution or the sending office if it's a transfer. Now the home provider. They're our partner. With in-field supervision, they're our partner for the reentrance success. Because if they have a successful home environment, it's going to work out for us to make sure that they have success in their reentry. We're going to ask them to comply with providing information regarding the home and all the occupants and any expected visitors. We're going to ask them to provide the landlord information and copies of leases. We're going to ask that they consent to a tour of the home and the sign and consent to the provisions of the home provider agreement letter. Now that home provider agreement letter, we have copies of those back on the back table outside just in case anybody would like a copy of that. Now what can you expect whenever we come to the home? We're going to discuss the dynamics of the relationships within the home. We're going to discuss domestic violence regardless of the relationship with the reentrant. We're going to ask questions about any sexual violence. We are all trauma informed. We have trauma informed response. But we do need to know the answers to these things because, once again, we want to ensure reentrant success. We're also going to conduct a walkthrough of all aspects of the home and make notes of any entrances, exits, or any safety concerns. We're going to discuss with that home provider resources for the reentrant as part of their return. We're not just going to say, here's this individual. We're going to say, also within the community, we have the following things. And it may just be that we're talking about a class with a reentry agent. Or we'll be talking about stuff like this. An individual has needs for certain types of treatment. We're going to be discussing that with that home provider. We're also going to be discussing that home provider agreement letter prior to it being signed, and it is a requirement for an individual to reside in a home, is that home provider agreement letter. And we're going to discuss public information regarding that reentrant. Part of the public information that we have to discuss with them is going to be the facts, what they're convicted of, whether or not there's going to be any restrictions, whether or not those restrictions will have an impact on that home provider. And we're also going to discuss the role and impact, like I had mentioned earlier. Sean, he decided to run. All of a sudden my brain, what's going on here? And I go back and I talk to his mom. Did we have a good role? Did we have an impact? Absolutely. And it started with that home provider agreement letter whenever I sat down and I reviewed it with her at her home. Because I discussed things like, if he's doing wrong, let me know. Let's try to stop it. If his brain is going, wait a minute, what's going on? we need to talk about it. Because Sean had problems with individuals that he didn't know very well. That was his wall that he would put up. And his mom told me about that right in the very beginning. A couple years later, I'm just like, Sean, he's like coming right over to me as soon as I should pull up, because we developed a relationship. And it started with the relationship with his mother. So as I discussed, we've got that home provider agreement letter. It outlines the roles, responsibilities, and the impact that housing reentrant presents to the provider. Home providers do give up certain rights whenever they house a reentrant. If we have a reentrant that's not allowed to have alcohol, that impacts that home provider. If we have reentrants are not allowed to possess firearms or other weapons, that impacts the home provider. And so that's part of what we do whenever we discuss it. We cover all the conditions. The conditions are outlined within that home plan brochure. We have those out on the table as well. We talk about minimum periods of residency, granting access for the reentrant and the parole supervision staff. We discuss searches, seizures, curfew, firearms, other weapons, prohibited persons, absconding, what happens if an individual absconds, whether or not somebody might have to testify at hearings, and regretfully, sometimes we have to talk about what happens if somebody interferes with the lawful arrest of someone. A special carve-out within the sex offender home plan agreement letter also covers prohibited items and activities that are specific to that population. If we have an individual that is a registered sex offender or under sex offender supervision, we make sure we outline that for the people within that home provider agreement letter so they are aware fully as it might impact them. So one of the questions I get all the time is, what can get my home plan rejected? The biggest one is landlord unwilling to have the reentrant live in the home. The second, and I kind of put these down in the order that I've encountered them the most frequently. Safety concerns for the reentrant and the public and or the agent. Home being physically unsafe or unfit for occupancy. Conditions in the home that would present an increase in likelihood of reoffending or technical violations. This could include the presence of others that are on community supervision. If we have an individual that has a restriction, they are to have no contact with XYZ, it would not make sense for us to say, yeah, we're going to approve this home plan where we know XYZ lives, because then we're just turning around and just instantly violating somebody. We try to avoid that before we even start. We also look at if we have an uncooperative home provider. If we have somebody who does not answer the phone, who we go out, we set up appointments, they fail to answer the door, they don't allow us to actually enter the home, we can't approve that home plan. And then a lack of willingness to sign and comply with the home provider agreement letter. And finally, anything that's presented in the home or the immediate vicinity that would constitute a violation of their parole conditions. Every individual has special conditions that's based upon their actual needs, and we need to make sure that we address that. There are times whenever we have to reject in a confidential manner. All right? As such, supervision staff are unable to share the reasons for those confidential rejections. Some examples: victim proximity or high probable risk of re-victimization. That includes for the reentrant. If the reentrant is a victim themselves and there's a high risk of those being re-victimized, we're not going to approve that plan. If we have domestic violence or sexual violence details that are to remain confidential in order to assist those who are dealing with that trauma. We also look at the home provider and the landlord and or the landlord requesting a confidential rejection. We have had that before. We have it on a regular basis where we have a home provider say, yeah, we told them they could live it, but if you could find a reason to say no, because we're scared of this person, or because this person needs to do the next step without me. Release of the reentrant to the home would compromise current law enforcement operations. I can speak to that on a personal note. I was doing one in the city of Reading where I went and I cleared it through the local police, and they said, please do not release anybody to this home for a little while because we are in the middle of a human trafficking operation. All right. At that point in time, I believe that they had 48 counts. All right. And potential disclosure or access to former informants. So, Rouze is telling me I got no time left. All right. So once it's approved, what's going to happen next? Well, the reentrant's going to have pre-release status. The institutional staff is going to notify them of the approved plan, and then there's a specific release process that occurs over which the field have no jurisdiction over. They're going to have to go through. They're going to do the records check. They're going to do the drug screen. They've got other verifications. All right. If they're already released, their agent of record will inform them of it, and they will give them instructions based upon that new home plan. If they're in a halfway house community corrections center, they have to wait until their agent provides them with their release from the center. And interstate plans will require the other state to actually approve them to come before we can release them. And if there are any questions regarding specific home plans, they must go through the reentrant's current agent. I cannot answer to specific investigations. I can just talk on a general basis. And I understand that there's going to be a lot of questions about home plans and stuff like that. And so I turn it over to you guys, and I'll take questions after the panel.
Ready, Julian? This is not going as smooth as we hoped. Sorry.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I should preface, if you look at my bio, I am not as mean as I look, I swear. I'm gentle as a lamb. I mean, except for Mondays, and then Tuesdays after holidays, and of course, Wednesdays. But I think ultimately Larry serves as a good segue into what I want to talk about today, and that's going to be two of the reentry services that the DOC currently covers and funds. One is the Housing Assistance Program, and then the second program is our new program, which is REACH, is Reentrants Attaining Community Housing. That's currently a federally funded Pay for Success grant-funded program, and I'm going to talk about those here today with you all. So this diagram here, I usually try to show this with every training or presentation I do, and it serves kind of a reminder of where we've come from. With the reentry services, I think DOC has come a long way. I think there's been a lot of discussion about what we do and what we offer, and I think in hearing everything today, I think there's a lot of individuals that don't know what we do and don't know what we offer. We started these services 8 years ago. We started these services with probably one bubble here, and we look at this diagram. We didn't have this many departments, we didn't have this many people involved with it. Through those 8 years, we've been able to run through 2 consecutive contracts. We're on our 3rd contract with our vendors. And we have built up a communication in between all these departments that I, for one, am very proud of. Ultimately, I think I'm not the best speaker. I'm not the well-rounded speaker, but I try to go into presentations and listen to the message of what the group is kind of talking about. And what I kind of heard today was the message of understanding where we've been, where we are, and where we're going to go. And I think this gives a good representation of where the DOC has been. I think people have a perception of what the DOC has offered or has done in the past, and I'm here to tell you it's not the same. We offer something completely different today, and ultimately we are going to look to strive and improve on what we offer tomorrow. So for this diagram, to me, it's very important because a lot of my colleagues are in the room today, and we wouldn't be able to do this without them, and ultimately I think we're all proud of what we do and what we offer and what we can do and what we will offer. So ultimately, this next slide here I want to kind of talk about, I feel like for some reason is the best kept secret in the Department of Corrections, because currently we have 11 fully funded reentry services by the Department of Corrections. These are services that are available to any reentrant that leaves the SCI, that is currently on parole, special probation, interstate compact, or SDTP, that is our state drug treatment program. So these services across the state, we have over, if you can see, it's actually kind of a little bit cut off. We have over 230 service provider locations across the state. We have 90 providers that do these services in and amongst the community. So I also use this as kind of a little bit of a shameless plug. If anybody's interested in contracting with the state for any of these services, please feel free to reach out to me. But Like I said, any reentrant that leaves the SCI is able to utilize these services for as long as they're on parole, special probation, or interstate compact, like I said. So ultimately, we look to continue to fund these services, and we continue to adjust. So one of the things we've learned to adjust with these services is that not all reentrants have access. I think we all know transportation is one of the most difficult things. So we have been able to adapt our services to provide all of these services across the state in every county virtually. It's a service that, and an endeavor, I think, that we all agree is going to be beneficial to any reentrant returning to those counties that don't have brick and mortar locations of service providers that are available. First program I want to talk about here today is our housing assistance program. So our housing assistance program, like I said, is eligible to enter a reentrant that leaves the SCI. These reentrants ultimately are able to assess this program here. That is a 2-year program. Ultimately, once reentrants are referred, what we need and what we require is just 2 pay stubs. Basically, it allows us to determine what the reentrant is able to rent, how much they can afford, and ultimately, once they start working with a vendor, the vendor allows us to develop an assessment. When we assess that reentrant, we determine whether or not they're a high need or a low need. If we have a reentrant that is a high need, we provide a stipend of $6,300 that reentrant is able to use towards rent and utilities, first month's security deposit, whatever we can entail in their rent. If we determine that reentrant is a low need, it is $2,100. This is money that does not come with an asterisk. This is money that I believe earlier, for me and being part of DOC Reentry, I feel challenged in the sense that we have a large budget and we should do something right with it. And I think this is something right that we do with it, that these reentrants are not required to pay this money back. It doesn't come with an asterisk. It doesn't come with a situation or stipulations. This is money, this is funding that is available to them that, in all honesty, not many people tend to know about. So that's why I'm up here today talking about it, ultimately. So, like I said, ultimately, reentrants were able to use this service for 2 years, and it's different. If you look back in the previous slide, you know, most of these look at 1 year. Ultimately, the reason why we do this service for 2 years, because not everybody's rent ready. We've had individuals that come out, 10 years incarcerated, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Everybody's going to be in a different situation in their ability to rent. So we want to have the ultimate amount of time for that reentrant to get ready, to be ready, feel comfortable, and to find a place that they feel comfortable in living and moving into. Now, I think Larry provides a great segue into the situation because a lot of what parole does is also involved here. Parole will review our home plans, and they're part of the process. Like the previous diagram showed, we're all one team. We have one goal, and that's to get our reentrants out safely and securely into the community and have them transition as positively as possible. Overall, this is our most popular program across the board, but as I stated, reentrants are able to access this at any point in time. The only situation where we are unable to fund reentrants is if they max out their sentence and they don't roll over into anything like special probation or interstate compact. So like I said, this is our other program. We just started this last year. This is a Pay for Success grant-funded program. But essentially, I think as part of the DOC's reentry team, we try to look at barriers. When we looked at starting these services, we looked at the barriers reentrants faced. They would have to make the decision to go out. Do I want to get my daughter a gift that I haven't seen in 5 years? Or do I want to pay for my sex offender polygraph? There are going to be different problems and situations that reentrants are going to face that we identify those barriers. If a reentrant goes out and requires sex offender treatment, we cover up to 3 polygraph tests. If you're not familiar, those tests cost in around $525 a piece. So there are different things that we looked at with all of these services. How can we improve? How can we make them better? One of the things we looked at with the housing assistance program was what happens with reentrants that aren't able to work, that can't earn any money, that are disabled. So that's where we developed this program. We developed this over the last couple of years. If anybody is involved with developing programs and writing RFIs and ITQs, you know how long that can kind of take. So we had started this in 2021. We were able to get this off the ground last year. We've had our full year of service with our vendors across the state. We have 3 vendors, 3 vendor counties, I should say. We are working out of Lackawanna, Dauphin, and Allegheny County. What we try to do is we try to assess individuals that are at the SCI level, so we know when they're coming into community corrections, we know that they don't have a home plan, we know they're disabled, we know they're unable to work. We want to make sure that our deliverable is that we're reducing the population in community corrections. If we free up a bed in community corrections, that gives a bed to another individual getting out for their chance of success. So like I stated, our goal overall is 250 reentrants through this program. Being this is a grant-funded program, what is really important to us with this is the data in the situation. Is we want to know whether or not this was successful. We want to be able to see this have a positive impact on the community, have a positive impact on reentrants, but mainly we want to see the positive impact on recidivism. Because ultimately the goal for us at the end of this is to make this our 12th lot. We have currently 11 funded by the Department of Corrections. We would like to make this our 12th and then move on to our next one, which is going to be involving max out cases. So that is the gist of the REACH program. One of the things I like to include here is just some of the definitions we look at. Another component we decided to do and move forward with the REACH program is that we looked at our hardest to place individuals across the board, and we wanted to make sure that our vendors were incentivized to work with individuals that may come with greater difficulties than others. So as you can see here, we broke down and defined what we look at as initial placement, permanent placement, and our recidivism reduction, and how we have set aside funding to incentivize vendors to place reentrants in permanent housing and focus on recidivism, which we track in around, I believe, 21 months after the reentrant is placed in permanent housing. So on to the data, and I will have to say this is actually pretty fresh data. We have only been able to collect data for probably the last year. We use our vendors provide data, and we also get data from our billing department. And one of the things that we can see here is that in the last fiscal year, we have housed 821 individuals, reentrants, in our housing assistance program. I think that is a good goal, but to me, I think we could do much, much more. But I think it's important to know and understand the data, because when I look at this, I can see a couple different areas that we're going to know and look at and adjust as we move forward. This is just to show perspective of how things have gone with REACH. These are the number of referrals. You can see we started out in November of 2023, roughly, and you can see how things have progressed along the lines. You know, everybody in this field kind of knows and understands. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get the wheels moving, so to say. And this overall here, this kind of reflects back to the third slide there when I talked about reentry services. So this is something that I think we are all proud of in the Department of Reentry, is that within the last fiscal year, we have provided 11,194 unique referrals for reentrants, and that's referrals to any one of our 11 services fully funded by the Department of Corrections. And this last table, to me, is a great reflection of the work that our team has done. I've been with these services since the inception, so I've been here since 2014, and a grand total of 107,493 referrals have been made. And we've processed, and those are reentrants going to services, those are reentrants getting the services they need, those are reentrants going home to their families, those are reentrants positively going back to the community. So, that being said, that's all I have for the Department of Reentry.
Did it.
Hello, my name is Lauren. I am the Human Service Analyst from OMSAS. I oversee our projects for assistance in transition from homelessness. I am the least important person in our presentation. I really want to get to the actual work, so I'm just here to tell you where the money comes from, and when we get more money, how you can apply for it. So that's PATH. You'll hear it, PATH, Projects for Assistance in Transition from Homelessness. It's a mouthful. It is funded by SAMHSA. It's a formula grant, so it is given to all of the states and territories based off of some weird government formula that I don't know how to explain. But in Pennsylvania, here are our total dollar amounts, as well as the number of people that we were able to serve over the last several years. The goal of the PATH program is to reduce or eliminate homelessness for adults with serious mental illness. And I will say that serious mental illness is not necessarily have to be formally documented by a psychiatrist. That can be a part of the goal. It's meant to be a low barrier program, so if a person reports having been involved with mental health, you as the outreach worker or the caseworker notice some significant mental health symptoms, that's good enough for the PATH program. Because a lot of times people say, I don't have mental health, but I'm just talking to these voices that I'm hearing, or people don't identify with mental health because of the stigma that surrounds it. So PATH funds, they're used to provide fill in the gaps of existing services that Medicaid can often pay for. So things like street outreach, case management before they have that formal documentation to receive the Medicaid targeted case management. We can pay for residential supports, which is what Hope Homes does, and services that are not supported by mainstream health programs. And these are the counties that we cover. I cover all of those counties, and what I will say is that no county's homelessness looks the same. So getting to know each county's unique needs, from Philly to Clarion to Erie, and down into Greene County. Everybody has unique needs. Homelessness looks different everywhere. And so when I went to monitor the Clarion program, I noticed how well they were addressing the homelessness in their community. And what they saw is that a lot of individuals were coming from the jails and were coming from substance use treatment facilities. So with that, I will introduce Alicia to talk about CCR, who's our PATH provider in Clarion County.
Hi, my name is Alicia, and I'm just going to talk about what CCR is. We're Center for Community Resources. It's a nonprofit agency. We're in 67 counties in Pennsylvania. Specifically, Amy, my housing coordinator, and I work out of Clarion. We have 16 physical offices in Clarion, and through our programs, we serve over 40,000 individuals a year. We do housing, obviously, with Hope Homes. We also provide HIV, non-medical care, utility assistance, veteran assistance, behavioral and mental health, crisis intervention, drug and alcohol, ID services, and treatment and behavioral health court we also oversee. So now I'm going to turn it over to Amy, and she is our Hope Homes coordinator, and she's going to let you know what that's about.
So I run Hope Homes, which is a transitional housing program. Most of our referrals come from prisons, jails, state hospitals, local psych agencies, or self-referrals. So we currently have 3 Hope Homes. They look like regular houses from the outside. One can house 2 downstairs, 2 upstairs. One is kind of our handicapped house with a ramp, and that houses 3. We have one across town right now that has 1 individual, and she's being reunified with her 2 kids. So I guess that 3rd house we may or may not gear more towards families, because right now it's just individually based. No pets, no kids. Kids can come on the weekends to visit, which is something new that we didn't start. So how it begins at Hope Homes is once I get the referral, I'll do a housing screen to see if they'd be a good candidate for Hope Homes, because we cannot have any sex offenders. One main reason is because the kids come to visit, and that's huge for somebody's mental health when they're trying to beat a drug addiction and homelessness. So the one thing that they can look forward to is seeing their kids. So when they come in, I always ask, do you need an ID? Do you need a birth certificate? Do you need a social security card? Because that starts everything to help, whether they need to be connected with SOAR or a blended case manager, get a job. So they basically have 6 months to take a breath. Here are your tools. What do we do next to get you a job and get you successful to permanent housing. So whatever they need to do, they need to get food assistance. Some just come with what they got arrested in. So I get them clothes. I have gotten them packs of cigarettes if that's going to make them focus to do my paperwork. I do that. So it's pretty much just a safe place. Everything's locked 24/7. They have little key fobs that they use. And it's hit or miss as far as the wait list. Right now it's full. However, when we go back, I might have 2 moving out. So there's always somebody to roll right into. And I get a lot of calls from the jails especially. I like everybody at Hope Homes to be on probation because it's much smoother. There's cameras. I'm not great at checking them. And they usually don't work half the time. But normally it's a great group of people that really do want to change. And there's not many people home during the day. They're either at counseling or probation appointments, hearings. So, and they know my door is always open. They have my personal cell. I live right in town. Somebody's always locking themselves out. So it's a good program. I wish we had a few more houses, but it takes funding. And I only get, maybe $8,000 a year from July to July. And by the time I help one person to move in, it's usually about $1,600. So that doesn't help too many people. So if you have questions, I'll be right here.
Give it to Rosa. Rosa's going to take it around. Where are you? Oh man, where are you? You want to help me find you?
Up top, straight up is the PDF one. I see it. Right there.
Oh, jeez. It's supposed to be. There you go.
There we go. All right. Hi, my name is Danysh. I'm the executive director of Tomorrow's Neighbors. I actually prepared a PowerPoint, and then last night I changed what I'm going to say. So I'm just going to play the PowerPoint in the back because I can tell you what we do, but these pictures kind of illustrate what we do. So I'll just randomly do this. So I said my name is Danysh. I'm the executive director of Tomorrow's Neighbors. But for 24 years before that, I was DL 4879. So I was incarcerated from the age of 18 to 40. I was very scared to come home after 24 years. All I had seen was parole violators, right? That's all you see inside. You don't see success stories, because they don't show them on TV. It's not sexy news. But if a guy knocks off a liquor store, boom, it's on the news every night. And then he's in the cell next to you. So you think it's impossible. So I actually incorporated Tomorrow's Neighbors while I was incarcerated for a survival skill. I wanted to create an organization that would help me, that would help other people. But in order to do it right, I started asking parole violators why they were back. And I asked a lot of them. And initially you'll get reasons like my PO's an asshole, right? No offense to POs in the room. But then when you start peeling back the layers, it came down to 2 things. They felt overwhelmed or they felt alone. And those 2 things will lead you into substance abuse, terrible relationships that you'll stay in because you need a home plan, right? I mean, I'm sure you guys deal with that all the time. So Tomorrow's Neighbors was designed to alleviate that, to address the mental and emotional side of reentry, which is often overlooked, right? We give resources, but nobody helps them actually take advantage of those resources, to hold their hands. We heard someone talking earlier about wanting to give up. There's guys that have never been on the internet. They're not going to go on the internet and look for stuff because they're going to get so frustrated they're going to give up. And they're going to go back to what they know how to do. So I modeled our program after the peer support program in the Department of Corrections. I worked in there from 2012 till 2020, changed my life, changed the way I saw myself, changed a lot inside of me. So our program was to use people with lived experience to mentor other people coming out of incarceration. What we like to say at Tomorrow's Neighbors is, if I can find it, empathy requires you to imagine what it would be like to walk in someone else's shoes. At Tomorrow's Neighbors, we know what it was like to walk in your state boots. And so as soon as someone comes home and gets a mentor too, they immediately see success as possible. Sometimes for the first time, they see someone that says, I've been out here for 5 years. And nobody has the same roadmap to get to that success, but at least they know it's possible. So everyone that works for Tomorrow's Neighbors is either a reentrant or a reentrant family member. And this is one thing that we always forget to talk about in reentry. The family is impacted just as much as the reentrant. And there's not many services for the family. I'd say probably half the work we do is dealing with reentrants dealing with their family, or their family dealing with the reentrant. The emotional side, the mental health side. I went in when I was 18. When I came home, my mom thought she was getting an 18-year-old. I don't look 18 anymore, right? I'm not 18, right? So that's something we have to adjust when we come home. So I was released in 2020. I'm going to go through quick because we don't have a lot of time. By 2022, we were named Nonprofit of the Year, and we were awarded a $1 million grant from Cumberland County to open the Cumberland House. So if you don't believe in God, that's evidence. And I share that to say there's nothing spectacular about me. I mean, thank God for the Pell Grant Second Chance program that came back, because that's where I did my business plan. That's where I learned how to do what I'm doing. But we are a 13-bed reentry housing solution. I use that term on purpose. We are not a halfway house. We are solving the reentry problem when it comes to housing. We specialize in long-term incarceration, individuals that have served 40 years, 10 years, 15 years. We also have some county guys, because we think there's benefit of some of those short-timers or first-timers interacting with people 20 years into their future. And we've seen great results from that. We also, you talked about difficult to place. We have a gentleman right now waiting on parole. We know he's going to need chemo when he comes home. If he didn't come to our house, he couldn't go to a halfway house. He would stay in prison. So we're trying to solve some of those situations for him too. And as we all know, the felony murder rule is under investigation by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court right now. If that gets granted, we're talking about 1,100 individuals sentenced to life that they're talking about giving them a minimum. And we talked about tough on crime. In the 90s, we got tough on crime. We started giving 20-year sentences out like nothing. Before that, we didn't have people coming home with 20 years in except for the occasionally commuted lifer. Now, hundreds coming home. And it's an experiment on the Commonwealth because we weren't prepared for it. And we're trying to make do with this. A person coming home after 20 years, I can attest to this, is not the same as a person coming home after 3 years. It doesn't take away from the guy with 3 years what his impact is. I was never on a cell phone. I was never on the internet before I came home. I had to learn everything again. At the Cumberland House, we provide much more. I keep forgetting to do this. We offer a lot more support and structure. So we're not your traditional halfway house. Everyone starts out in their own room. We don't search their property. I interviewed these individuals. I invited them into the house. Why would I search their property except to tell them I don't trust them? And let's think about it. I search your property on Monday. Tuesday, you can smuggle anything else you want in that house. We don't have metal detectors. The only cameras in our house are on the exterior doors. And that's in case someone says you did something. I could say, no, he was in this house, or no, he wasn't, because we're huge on accountability. But everything that reminds us of prison, eliminate it from the house. Cameras remind you of prison. It shows you somebody doesn't trust me. Staff is not present for 24 hours. We tell all the guys, this is your home. We've also ran into something that we didn't anticipate. Intense loneliness when people come home from prison. In prison, you constantly have your brothers around you. Constantly. You have staff around you. Annoyingly so, but they're there. You have counselors, you have mental health. You come home, everyone's at work. You're sitting in this house, and you have a million things you've been dreaming of doing, but you don't know what to do, when to do it. And all the guys are talking to us about this, and not to put it blankly, we're lonelier than we are horny coming home after 10 years, all right? Nobody was prepared for that, though, and it catches us off guard. And that can quickly lead to mental health decline, substance abuse. We don't assign any chores in our house, and it's still one of the cleanest reentry houses I've ever seen. The guys take pride in this house. They know it's theirs. We don't have a time limit. Individualized reentry plan. If you tell a guy when he comes home, you have 3 months to get your shit together, he's panicking from the door. His whole thought is on that 3 months, and he's not going to get anything done because he's thinking about it. I always say that prisons make good inmates, and it's true, right? That's what the prison's trying to do, is make good inmates while they're there, make them behave well. Good inmates don't make good citizens. So those in reentry, including the DOC's reentry, that's where we have to start doing, is saying we're going to prepare you to be good citizens before you leave. We don't need you to be a good inmate anymore, because the goal is you're not going to go back to prison, right? And speaking of, we want people to be good neighbors, and we don't have a rule book. We have expectations of a good neighbor. That is the only rules that when guys come in our house, and that's what we talk about. We expect you to be good neighbors to everyone in this program, everyone that works at this program, and everyone in our community. We're very big on the community. All of our guys do community service. We just walked in a Halloween parade. Like literally we were in it. The community invited us. We had a guy 6'4" dress up as Easter Bunny for the neighborhood association this past Easter. So, and I'd like to take credit and say we have a great program, but if you ask the guys in our house what the best part is, they say the community. They say the fact that they can walk down the street and people wave to them. And they'll be like, oh, if they only knew. And I'm like, they do know. We have no signs in our house, but everyone knows we're there. We're very open. We made a community for our men there. These are just some pictures. So we do reentry outings, right? We go hiking. We went to the shore one time. And this seems like we're just having fun, but it's new experiences. We had a guy from Philly. We went kayaking. He's like, I can't believe I'm on a river. We're like, well, you're not quite on a river, but to him it was a river, right? We went to the shore last year, and the guy kept walking around with a plastic bag. And we finally asked him, what's in the plastic bag? It was his mother's ashes. She died while he was incarcerated, and he always wanted to bring her to the beach, but he'd never been to the beach. So we had a funeral for her. These are the parts of reentry that we don't talk about. Most of us come home and lost people. I have had so many, I ask guys, where do you want to go? Inevitably, it's a cemetery. They want to visit those that they couldn't mourn. Ideally, we work with house guests up to 6 months prior to their release. We start that mentorship then. What we didn't realize ahead of time is the impact is we walk them through the parole process. So many guys self-destruct during the parole process. We're motivating them to go home and do well, right? But what's the first thing we do before they go home? I have 3 minutes, I have to go quick. We shove their nose in crap, right? We tell them, tell us about your worst moment. Tell me about your crime 3 times before parole. And then we say, all right, good luck, go home and be well. So we kind of walk them through that, talk them through that. The Cumberland model is presently being studied by Penn State, so they're studying our house. They want to see how we've been so successful. And I love saying this, but we literally flipped the recidivism rate. 1/4 of the people in our program don't successfully complete it. The other 3/4 went on to permanent housing. And someone the other day said, you're doing what the DOC can't, but that's not true because we're not doing it alone. And this is what I changed in my speech. You have a social worker here named Ms. Weichel. The DOC contacts us for people, accepts applications, lets them fill them out, sends them back to us. You guys know home plans. That expedites everything. The DOC has worked with us. The only reason we're successful is because what the DOC's been doing. So we're not doing what the DOC can't. We're doing what the DOC can't do alone. And if there's one message I want to leave here is, as soon as I read it, working with community, pairing up the community with the Department of Corrections, it's what we got to do, right? But pairing them up with reentrants, people with lived experience, organizations run by us, and I'm not saying we're the only ones that can do it, but we can do it good, right? Like we've been there. And you got to find the people that are sincere, because not everybody's sincere in reentry, right? We all know those people that are in this for a buck. This became fashionable. My mentor when I came home, Keith right there, came home after 24 years, he was my mentor. He's been doing this since no one knew what the term reentry was. And Tomorrow's Neighbors wouldn't exist if it weren't for Keith, so I want to thank you again publicly, Keith. But the biggest theme is this. We said hurt people, healed people, heal people. And we created a fraternity at Tomorrow's Neighbors. When you normally came home and wanted that relatability as someone with that shared experience, we had to go back in the street for it. And it sucked us back in every time, right? You build these positive communities, people flock to us. We have a family where we're at. So with that, I want to thank you guys. I want to thank you for attending this conference and having this conference. Rob Reed, thank you so much for PARC.
So we're opening for questions, and I'm not sure, Rob, how much time we have. We're already over, but does anybody have any questions for any of the panelists? Okay, there's a couple out there.
Hello, good afternoon. I guess this could be for anybody, but how would you recommend, I wholeheartedly believe that the partnership with the government and federal agencies are key to kind of pushing some of the organizational movement forward. So how would you guys recommend kind of building that relationship where you say, they'll send people over, we can send people back to them, kind of get that fluidity going to build that strong bond with some of these agencies and entities?
I think it starts with this conference. like doing more of this, right? I mean, that's what we need to do. We have to have these conversations. We also have to make funding easier, because small organizations, you know, there's grassroots organizations and there's artificial turf organizations. Artificial turf organizations can afford grant writers. The people doing the work don't always have the time or the manpower to do that. So simplifying funding. Anyone else?
Hello, how y'all doing? This is not a question, it's a statement for Kurt. You speak about reentrance and the community work that we do. I was incarcerated for 20 years, so next year it'll be 10 years I've been home. 8 years ago, I didn't even know what reentry was. And if Kurt, Shane, Chris, if they wasn't my friends on the inside, then I would be the statistic y'all speaking about. It's only because of our relationship that I lasted this long, and I'm starting to see the fruits of my brother's labor, and I want to thank you, bro.
Thank you, Jeff.
So my question is for Larry, and this is for re-entrance outside. Because I'm a housing case manager with the program is about change, and I wanted to know what can DOC do to expedite the home plan, especially for re-entrance when they are in like the halfway houses or at a state correctional center, because it's taking like 6 weeks for it to get approved, and these re-entrants want to leave these centers where they can actually fee free. And I'm seeing that it's taking like longer and longer and longer. So what can DOC do to kind of like, you know, make the process shorter for them?
Okay, so what we've already have is when a home plan is assigned to an agent, it has a due date, and that's monitored all the way up to our central office staff within field services. The second part is we are looking at places where the process is taking longer and trying to identify what is that clog in the pipeline. And once we have those identified, those are also going through, and it's been reported off, and whenever it comes to our attention, the people who are above me, they're aware of it, and they're looking to see what they could do to open up that pipeline. When I first started 20 years ago, it was not uncommon for somebody who was already out to have 8, 9, 10 weeks to get a decision back. We've created processes that have made it more efficient, but we still have a ways to go, and we're trying to make it so that somebody submits that home plan to their agent, it gets assigned out, and then it gets followed up on by the chain of command to ensure that we're doing things to address the needs of the re-entrants.
Well, we're out of time for questions, but you see the bios and the thing. This is just a taste of reentry housing. Our subcommittee with PARC does a lot of work with many different agencies. And so if you have other questions, we do have a table out there with some of their information. You can go out and grab some. We also have our PARC Housing Subcommittee's strategic plan listed on the table, as well as a place you can sign up if you want more information about the PARC Housing Subcommittee, or say, you know, I think I may be interested in partaking on it. But thank you so much. This is a great group, and we appreciate their volunteering to come up here. Or you volunteered.